Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to try to, we're diving deep into the world of Donald Trump, Russia, and the KGB. You share some excerpts from Craig Unger's book, American Kompromat.
Right.
And it paints a pretty fascinating and, controversial picture of Trump's history.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're going to try to untangle this web of connections and see what we can learn.
All right, sounds good.
So to kick things off, Unger starts by taking us back to the 1980s.
Okay.
The peak of the Cold War.
Right.
And he argues that the KGB was actively seeking to recruit assets in the U.S., especially ambitious businessmen like Trump.
Yeah.
Why do you think someone like Trump would have been so appealing to the KGB?
Well, I mean, you have to remember the 1980s was a time of intense rivalry between the U.S. and the Soviet Union.
Of course.
And the KGB was notorious for its active measures.
Right.
Basically using disinformation and propaganda to weaken the West from within. And Trump, a young, charismatic, highly visible businessman with a penchant for publicity, would have been seen as a prime target.
Oh, yeah.
Someone they could potentially influence or even manipulate.
Okay, so Trump's in their sights.
Right.
Unger talks about this rather strange story about Trump buying hundreds of TVs from a suspected KGB front in New York for his Grand Hyatt Hotel. These TVs were dual system, capable of receiving Soviet broadcasts.
Interesting.
What's the significance of this?
Well,
it seems like such a minor detail, but Unger seems to think it's important.
Yeah, it might seem trivial, but it's these seemingly insignificant details that intelligence agencies often exploit.
I see.
The owner of the electronics store, Semyon Kislin, was a Soviet emigre suspected of having KGB ties.
Okay.
Unger suggests that this TV purchase wasn't just a business transaction, but possibly an attempt to get closer to Trump to establish a connection they could leverage later.
So it's about building a relationship, gaining trust.
Exactly.
It sounds like something out of a spy novel.
Absolutely, and it fits a pattern.
Okay.
Unger points to Trump's sudden interest in nuclear arms negotiations in the mid-'80s.
Interesting.
A time when he had no real expertise in foreign policy.
Right.
He even met with Soviet Ambassador Anatoly Dobrinin.
Wow.
Was this genuine interest, or was it a way to appear knowledgeable and influential, potentially to impress those Soviet contacts he'd been cultivating?
It makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Unger seems to believe it was the latter, and he takes it a step further.
Okay.
He claims that by 1987, the KGB might have considered Trump an actual asset. He cites Trump publishing newspaper ads, criticizing U.S. foreign policy, echoing KGB talking points almost verbatim.
Right.
How big of a deal were these ads?
Those ads were more than just a businessman expressing his opinions.
Okay.
They were picked up by media outlets around the world and caused quite a stir.
Yeah.
They criticized U.S. foreign policy, pushing for things like Japan and European countries paying more for their defense.
Right.
This directly aligned with the KGB's objectives of sowing discord between the U.S. and its allies.
Interesting. And according to Unger, there was a celebration at KGB headquarters after those ads were published.
There was.
That's pretty significant, isn't it?
It is. It suggests that the KGB viewed those ads as a successful active measure.
Wow.
Meaning they believed they had successfully influenced public opinion and sowed discord within the Western alliance. And they saw Trump as someone who, knowingly or unknowingly, was helping them achieve those goals.
So we've got a young, ambitious Trump possibly being drawn into this web of KGB intrigue.
Yeah.
But the story doesn't end there, does it?
It does not.
Unger dives into the murky world of post-Soviet Russia, organized crime, and figures like David Bogatin.
Right.
Why is this relevant to the story?
Well, the collapse of the Soviet Union didn't mean the end of Russian intelligence operations.
Right.
In fact, they adapted. Unger argues that the lines between the Russian mafia and Russian intelligence became increasingly blurred in the 1990s. And Trump, with his business dealings in a city like New York, a hub for Russian emigres and allegedly organized crime, would have been operating in that very environment.
And this is where figures like David Bogatin come in.
Yes.
Okay. Unger claims that individuals like Bogatin, who bought multiple condos from Trump with millions in cash, were allegedly involved in money laundering for the Russian mafia.
Really?
This raises questions about who Trump was doing business with.
Of course.
And whether he was aware of their alleged criminal activities.
It's certainly starting to feel like Trump is getting deeper and deeper into a very complex and potentially dangerous world.
Yeah, and Unger argues that these connections, these potential entanglements with Russian individuals with questionable backgrounds, might have made Trump even more valuable to Russian intelligence. It's a pattern that Unger suggests continued for years.
And we haven't even gotten to Jeffrey Epstein yet.
Nope.
This is just the tip of the the iceberg.
Indeed.
And Epstein is where things get even more complicated and controversial. Absolutely.
So before we get to Epstein, let's take a step back for a second.
Sure.
We've been talking about this possible KGB cultivation and all these shady business deals, organized crime. What's the bigger picture here? What does Unger think was the end goal for Russia?
Well, that's a crucial question.
Yeah.
And Unger suggests that all of this, the cultivation, the connections, was part of a long-term strategy to gain influence over individuals who might one day hold positions of power in the West. Imagine the advantage if they had something on someone like Trump. Who at that point was already a well-known figure.
Yeah, it's a chilling thought.
Yeah.
And this is where Epstein enters the picture. Unger paints him as almost a Kompromat king, gathering compromising material on powerful figures, potentially including Trump.
Yeah.
But was Epstein working with Russian intelligence? Or was he just a convenient tool they could exploit?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unger doesn't explicitly state that Epstein was a Russian agent. But he lays out a pretty compelling case for how Russian intelligence could have infiltrated Epstein's world. Remember, Epstein was known for his lavish parties, his private island, his connections to the rich and powerful. It was a world ripe for exploitation.
And Unger highlights specific individuals within Epstein's circle. With potential ties to Russia, right? Like Svetlana Pozhadeva.
Exactly. Pozhadeva had this promising academic career in Russia. But she abruptly shifted to modeling and then landed in Epstein's orbit.
Interesting.
It's a strange trajectory.
It is.
Unger suggests she might have been more than just a model, possibly acting as a conduit between Epstein and Russian intelligence.
So she's a potential link between Epstein's world and Russian intelligence?
Potentially, yeah.
It sounds like something out of a spy thriller.
It does, and it gets even more intriguing.
Oh, boy.
Unger brings up Peter Listerman. A Russian known for procuring women for wealthy and powerful men. Listerman had connections to both Epstein and Russian oligarchs close to Putin, suggesting a potential link between Epstein's activities and the Russian elite.
Wow.
He even describes an incident where Listerman allegedly provided long-legged girls for a dinner with Putin and some oligarchs.
It's a pretty unsettling image.
Yeah.
So we have this web of connections between Epstein, Russian intelligence, and powerful figures. But where's the concrete evidence that any compromising material was gathered on Trump?
Well,
Unger talks a lot about John Mark Dugan, the former Palm Beach deputy who claims to have a trove of Epstein's videos and fled to Moscow. How much stock can we put in his story?
Dugan is a controversial figure, and his claims are certainly dramatic. He alleges that he was given these videos by a fellow officer who was investigating Epstein, and then the FBI came knocking, prompting him to flee to Russia.
Wow.
Unger acknowledges some inconsistencies in Dugan's story, but he also highlights the fact that the FBI did raid Dugan's home.
So even if we take Dugan's story with a grain of salt, the possibility that these videos exist, that they could be used as leverage, is still a major concern, right?
Absolutely. The existence of such material, whether it's videos or other forms of compromat, would give anyone who possesses it immense power. And in the hands of a foreign intelligence agency, it could be used to influence or even blackmail individuals in positions of power.
It's like a ticking time bomb.
It is.
But let's shift gears a bit. Unger doesn't just focus on potential compromat. He also argues that Trump's presidency, even years later, created an environment where individuals with questionable ties to Russia were able to gain positions of power. How does he support this claim?
He points to specific appointments like William Barr as Attorney General. He suggests that Barr, who had a very expansive view of executive power, might have been willing to shield Trump from scrutiny, particularly regarding any investigations into his Russia ties.
Barr's handling of the Mueller report certainly raised eyebrows at the time.
It did.
And what about John Ratcliffe, who became Director of National Intelligence?
Ratcliffe's appointment was particularly controversial. He had a very limited experience in the field. But he was a staunch Trump loyalist. Unger argues that his appointment, along with Trump's constant attacks on the intelligence community, suggests a pattern of undermining institutions that could hold him accountable.
So we've got this picture of a presidency where loyalty trumps expertise, and individuals with questionable ties to Russia are suddenly in positions of power. It's a recipe for disaster, isn't it?
It certainly raises concerns about the potential for conflicts of interest, the erosion of democratic norms, and the weakening of American institutions.
This is getting really heavy.
It is.
But Unger takes it even a step further. He suggests that Trump's actions might not have been just about personal ambition or incompetence.
But
could have been driven by something more sinister?
Mm-hmm.
What does he mean?
This is where Unger delves into the realm of speculation.
Okay.
He implies that Trump's actions might have been influenced by a deeper level of connection to Russia, possibly even a dependency. That goes beyond mere compromat.
A dependency. What could that entail?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And it's one that Unger doesn't answer directly. He hints at it.
Right.
Leaving us to ponder the possibilities.
Okay, so we've got possible compromat, organized crime connections, a compromised network.
Yeah.
And now this potential dependency on Russia?
Right.
It's a lot to take in.
It's a complex and troubling story.
Yeah.
One that raises serious questions about the nature of power, influence, and the vulnerabilities of democratic institutions.
Right.
And it's a story that, according to Unger, might have even deeper, darker chapters yet to be revealed.
So Unger leaves us with this unsettling feeling that there's even more to Trump's relationship with Russia than meets the eye.
Yeah.
You mentioned this idea of dependency.
Right.
What exactly could Trump be dependent on?
Well, that's really the heart of Unger's argument.
Okay.
And he builds his case by looking at Trump's business history, particularly his dealings with Russian individuals and entities.
Right.
Remember, even before his political aspirations,
Yeah.
Trump had a long history of seeking out Russian money for his various ventures.
Right. Unger talks about how, even in the 80s, Trump was already looking to Moscow for potential business deals.
Exactly.
He even wanted to build a Trump Tower there.
He did.
And those ambitions never really went away.
Nope.
As Trump's businesses faced financial troubles in the U.S., he increasingly turned to Russian investors and oligarchs for funding.
Right.
Unger suggests that this reliance on Russian money might have created a financial dependency that could be exploited. So it's not just about potential compromat.
Right.
It's about financial leverage.
Exactly.
What kind of deals are we talking about here?
Well, Unger points to a number of questionable transactions.
Okay.
Involving Russian individuals and companies with close ties to the Kremlin. There are allegations of money laundering through Trump's real estate holdings,
Right.
opaque investments from Russian oligarchs, and even rumors of loans from Russian state-owned banks.
If true, that would be huge.
It would.
It would mean that Trump was potentially beholden to Russian interests even before he became president.
That's the implication.
And this financial dependency, according to Unger, could explain some of Trump's actions as president, like his reluctance to criticize Putin,
Right.
or his willingness to undermine U.S. alliances that were seen as unfavorable to Russia. It's a pretty disturbing thought.
It is.
It suggests that Trump's personal financial interests might have been at odds with the national interests of the United States.
That's the implication, and it raises serious questions about whether Trump was ever truly able to act independently of Russian influence.
So what can we take away from all of this?
Wow.
We've gone from suspicious TV purchases
Right.
to potential compromat to a possible financial web entangling Trump with Russia.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process.
It is, but Unger's book, while controversial, offers a compelling narrative about how a foreign power might have cultivated, compromised, and potentially even controlled a U.S. president.
Wow.
It's a story that highlights the vulnerability of our democratic institutions and the dangers of unchecked ambition and greed.
It's a story that, frankly, is pretty terrifying.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what can be done to prevent something like this from happening again.
Well, Unger argues that we need to strengthen our defenses against foreign interference,
Okay.
increase transparency in our political system, and hold our leaders accountable for their actions.
Right.
He also emphasizes the importance of a free and independent press to act as a watchdog against corruption and abuse of power.
This has been a truly eye-opening deep dive.
It has.
It's clear that Trump's relationship with Russia is far more complex and troubling than many people realize.
Indeed, and while we may never know the full extent of that relationship, Unger's book provides a valuable framework for understanding the potential threats to our democracy and the importance of remaining vigilant in the face of those threats.
Thank you for joining us on this journey.
It was my pleasure.
It's been a wild ride, and we hope it's sparked some important conversations and reflections.
Me too.
Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep those critical thinking skills sharp.